If you remember on Sunday, we had just finished the telling of the Last Supper, which of course is what we call now the Lord's Supper or communion. Jesus had taken unleavened bread, broken it, and passed it around to them. He said, "Take this, eat. It is my body, which is given for you." And then he took the cup and he gave it to them all. And he said, "This is my blood of the covenant, poured out for you." And after they had eaten, Jesus told Peter that very night, Peter would deny that he knew Jesus before the rooster crowed twice. Of course, Peter denied it. He said, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never betray you." All of the others, they said the same. And then Judas got up and left to go and betray Jesus. And Jesus and the other 11 disciples went to the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was going to pray. And while Jesus was there with his disciples praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, Judas approached. And he came with a large crowd and some soldiers. They were coming to arrest Jesus. Jesus' other disciples fled. They ran away. And they took Jesus to the high priest for a trial. And as they had him on trial, they had several liars come along and testify about Jesus. But even then, their stories, their testimonies did not agree. And finally, the high priest himself asked Jesus, "Are you the Christ?" And Jesus replied, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." And the high priest understood that to be blasphemy, and he tore his clothes and said, "We don't need any more witnesses." Now, while the trial was going on, Peter came close by. And some of the people that were near recognized Peter. And they said, "You are one of the disciples of Jesus." And Peter denied that he knew Jesus. And the rooster crowed the first time. A little while later, they asked again, and he denied it again. And a third time, they asked Peter if he knew Jesus. And Peter denied knowing Jesus. And the rooster crowed a second time. Peter realized what he had done, and he went out, and he broke down, and he wept. They took Jesus to Pilate, and they convinced Pilate to have Jesus crucified, simply by gathering around and shouting over and over and over again, "Crucify him." So Pilate agreed to have Jesus crucified, and he was forced to carry his own cross. But because he was so weak from being beaten so severely, they got a man called Simon of Cyrene to carry the cross for him. And they made him carry it all the way to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of a skull. You can tell from the front of this, it looks kind of like the face of a skull. And so they forced Jesus, with Simon of Cyrene carrying it, to go to the top of Mount Golgotha, where they crucified Jesus. And with him, one on his right and one on his left, they crucified two criminals. Now, while Jesus was on the cross, some very unusual things happened. It became as dark as nighttime during the middle of the afternoon while the sun was in the sky. Jesus cried out, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then with a very loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. Just then, the earth shook, the temple curtain tore in two from top to bottom. A man named Joseph of Arimathea, he came and he took Jesus down from the cross, wrapped him in linen clothing, and buried him in a tomb in the rock that was nearby, his own tomb. And they rolled a stone in front of the tomb to seal it. We believe that this happened on Friday. The next day was a Sabbath day, and the Pharisees and chief priests, they were afraid because they remembered Jesus said that he would rise again. So they were concerned that Jesus' disciples would come and steal his body away in the night. So they set a guard on either side of the stone to guard the tomb to make sure that that didn't happen. Now, after the Sabbath day, on the first day of the week, early in the morning, there were two women, Mary and Mary, Magdalene and just Mary. They were coming to the tomb. They were coming to anoint Jesus' body with spices and oils. This was a common burial practice at the time. And as they walked, they wondered who would roll the stone away for them. And on their way, there was another earthquake, and an angel came, rolled the stone away, and sat on top of it, and the guards became like dead men. And when the women arrived at the tomb, they were terrified because they saw a young man dressed in dazzling bright clothing sitting by the tomb. And he told them, "Do not worry." He said, "You are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen. Come, see the place where they laid him. And then go tell Peter and the rest of the disciples that he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." And the tomb was empty. So the women left. They fled from the tomb. For trembling, fear, and astonishment had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Now I wonder, which part of this story did you like best? And I wonder, which part of this story did you think was the most important? I wonder, maybe, did you see yourself in this story somewhere? Which one of the people were you? Or maybe, where do you want to see yourself in this story? Maybe one more question is, I wonder, why did the chief priests want to have Jesus crucified? Well, that's our story for today. We, of course, will have some work for you to do, and I want you to get to choose one of three options.